Do you remember We Play? Have you seen my other video where I made the king of the pond? It's fine if you haven't, because today I'm making the 4 smaller fish from 2006's We Play. Now all the fish I'm making today are starting out the same, although they're different sizes. With a bit of white wool, I carved a mouth into it by just pulling the wool back, and then I felted it down onto the mat. Needlefelting is special because the needles have little barbs in them, which causes the fibers in the wool to get stuck together. Which means over time the wool forms a solid object. Kind of, it's still a bit squishy. With the base finished, because this is the plain old fish, I then added a lot of darker green wool along the back to form the tail. The reason this part doesn't have a base is because the white wool will actually poke through and make it a greenish white color, which you can kind of see later. Because of that, I made this tail a solid green color all the way through and just attached it to the body. After that, I took some more of that same darker green and started laying it out farther up on the body, make sure the tail is secured. In addition, on the actual sprite for the model, the darker green goes up a bit, before it turns into a lighter green, which I then laid out. I laid out a semicircle of this green wool and then followed that up by laying down the more waved, curvy line that the in-game sprite has. The darker green line's also wavy, so I added a bit more of that color over the light green. That way they would mix together, it'd look a bit more complex in the right light, and it'd follow the sprite a bit more. With the initial coloring of this fish done, it's time I can start moving on to the more interesting details that are going to stick out of him. The first thing I made was the top fin. Using the darker green and the lighter green, I made a rectangle out of those 2 colors of wool to make the dorsal fin. Once that was finished, I made the pectoral fin by taking a lighter green triangle, adding a dark green outline, and felting that together. I then attached that fin to the side, roughly in line where I'm going to put the eye in the future. I had the fin facing the wrong direction, felted down the triangle, flipped it over to face the correct way, and felted down along the outer edge again to make sure it stayed in place. Luckily, the eyes of these fish are pretty simple, so using some black wool, I laid out a little dot of it, felted it down to make the eye. With that finished, the last details for this fish were the 2 vertical lines on the dorsal fin, and then 2 more lines across the tail. With those 2 lines in place, it means this plain old fish is finally completed, which means I have 3 more to go. Heading back to the pond, the next fish I'm going to make is the nibbler. Starting off with the same base as the others, I'm then going to add yellow along the top to form the initial base layer of color. Now sometimes when you're making art, it doesn't always turn out the way you would like. For example, in this one, I didn't have the exact color match of wool to do it justice. The yellow isn't super saturated, the lighter blue isn't the correct color, but I'm gonna say the reasoning for that is because Nintendo scares me. So these aren't necessarily copies of the fish from We Play, they are merely heavily inspired by the We Play fish. Please don't come after me, Nintendo. With a base of yellow and blue set up, I'm now adding in the blue stripes that are going down across the body of the fish. With those details in place, I can then start working on the extra accoutrement that is meant to go with the fish. For example, the fin on the side, the little black eyeball, which is a little piece of black wool felted down towards the front of the fish. And once that was secure, I started working on the back fin. Now this one I made a little base of the blue wool, gave it a dark blue outline, and added 2 blue lines to make the ribs of the fin. I then attached this to the back of the fish, and using some more white wool, I anchored it down a bit more. Needlefelting is interesting because if you ever think it's not going to hold, if you just shove more wool on there, eventually the 2 pieces should stick together. Then again, it's pretty rude to pull on stuff, so ideally, you would never actually have to stress test any of these connection points. With a bit more yellow and blue to make sure the colors all match up, I can then start working on the dorsal fin. The same way I made the fin on the back, I made a sheet of light blue wool, gave it a darker blue outline. I made sure to needle felt this a lot to ensure that the dark blue and lighter blue doesn't pull apart. After that, I added in a few dark blue vertical lines on this fin. And once that was done, it was time to attach it to the fish. I experimented by putting the fin on the top of the fish and felting downward into it. That way, if there's any extra wool sticking out, it'll be peering out of the back where you're not going to see it. Doing this means the yellow color shows through unimpeded. To make sure that happens, I added a bit more yellow on the top, and here's the completed nibbler. With that, there's 2 more to go, and the next one I'm going to make is the touchy fish. Much like the other fish in this pond, this red one starts out basically the same. Using the fish base, this one being a bit bigger than the others, I first started laying out a reddish orange color along the bottom of the fish, creeping up towards the tail. Using that same reddish orange wool that I mixed up, I started making spots along the top of the fish as well. With all the darker spots in, I then had to fill in the rest of the fish with just a general orange color. And I have to admit, at this point, I kind of hated it. Now, I'm not one to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so hopefully it fixes itself eventually. Covering up the last bit of white on this fish with some orange, I then started adding the black detailing lines to hopefully salvage what at this point I feel like is a failing project. With the tail lines done, I then added the black eye that all the fish share towards the top of the head. Once that was finished, using the darker and lighter orange colors of wool, I made the top fin by needle felting a little square. You have to make sure to felt these bits a lot because you don't want them deteriorating when they're on the fish. And much like the other ones, I added the black lines going across the dorsal fin, since this tiny bit of color really helps it look a lot better. Video-wise, I'm putting this after the nibbler, but chronologically I made it first, because here you can see me needle felting the fin through the back of the fish, which causes some white spots a bit later. Using the red and orange wool I had, I made a little triangle for the pectoral fin, and I gave that a black outline, just so it sticks out from the body a bit more. Once it was finished, I attached it to the side by needle felting one edge of it down into the fish. And then to make sure this one stayed, I added a bit of red wool directly over it to help anchor it in place. Partway through, I wasn't sure how this one was going to turn out, but I have to say I enjoy it. It's very vibrant, and I think it's going to look really nice next to the other fish. Speaking of last and least, points-wise, is the small fry. Now, he might be worth less than nothing, but he's very cute. Now, I'm fairly certain the reason Nintendo gave you a free controller with a copy of Wii Play is because they knew you were going to break at least one of them when you catch the small fry, ruin your perfect run, and your poor teenage body can't handle the emotions, so you chuck your controller across the room. Allegedly. Hypothetically. In Minecraft, of course. With the base completed, I took a lighter brown, laid it across the body in a line, and then also along the edge of the tail. This would form the bulk of the color, as most of the small fry is a lighter brown. But the upper color was a bit of an issue. The in-game model, which is a watercolor look, is seemingly more gray. Now with the colors I had, I couldn't really recreate it. So in the end, I took a brown, some green, and some gray, mixed that all together, and laid that out in a very thick line across the top. Doesn't look super good right now, but I can work with this. To start this salvage mission, I took the lighter brown and started making it bleed over a bit more into the darker brown. After that, I took that darker brown and started making the spots going across the lower part of the body. In the delicate dance of dark and light, I had the lighter wool cover up almost 99% of the darker wool. I had a few spots of darker wool peer through, along with the very top. I then took very wispy bits of the lighter brown and made that go a bit farther down into the white. With the colors done, it's time to start adding the details. The first thing I added was the tiny black eye that all the fish share. After that, I started adding the 2 lines on the back fin. I made a white rectangle for the dorsal fin and I added 2 black lines onto that as well. With the lines in place, I put the fin in place by attaching it to the backside, and I secured that with some more of the darker brown green wool mixture. And finally, I added the triangle for the fin on the side. And with that, the small fry is finally finished, which means we can see all the different fish from We Play. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I'm going to be making the next big fish, the mystery fish, pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe, like the video, leave me a comment letting me know what you think or what you'd like to see next. And of course, I hope to see you next time.